Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee from the Skill Builder channel. I've come up to Oxford to meet Mike. Now, Mike is a keen viewer of Skill Builder and he's followed our advice to the letter here. He had a problem with a leaking shower. The walls were made of something like straw board or some rubbish like that. So he ripped them all out. He's done a great job and he's put back elements board everywhere. He's done it absolutely perfectly. He's taped and sealed everything that's within the wet area of the shower. And then he went and got a Mira Flight shower tray because I've recommended Mira Flight trays. I've used them, they're strong, they're durable, and I've just thought, well, he'll have no problem. Because he had a leak from this bathroom, this ensuite bathroom previously, he had a bit of ceiling damage. So there was a hole in the ceiling downstairs where the plasterboard all rotted, and that was great because he didn't repair that. Some people repair it before they do the plumbing, but he'd left that hole there. When the plumber put the shower tray in, they were able to look up through that hole with a torch and see that everything was okay before they repaired the ceiling or anything else. Now, when he was looking with the torch and he was running the shower, he could see drip, drip, drip in the torch light. So very, very useful. That's the sort of thing that people may not discover until it creates another damp patch on the ceiling, and then you're tearing your hair out because you're back to square one. You spent all this time, all this money, and you think you got yourself a waterproof bathroom and you haven't. The plumber thought that maybe the problem was that the tray, the new tray, wasn't sitting flat on the old waste. Because if the old waste pipe is in a certain position and you can't get it, it may be flexing. And I've had that situation where the pipe is actually stopping the tray from sitting flat. So what the plumber did, he said, look, I'm going to cut away a bit of the floorboard. We can always put that back afterwards, put some ply in there. But he said, what I'll do is I'll put one of these flexi wastes on here, and that means that the tray will be independent to a certain extent from the pipe work, and it'll allow for that little bit of flexing, that movement. Good idea, perfectly good product. I avoided them for years, but now I'm a bit of a fan of them because I didn't realise they were smooth on the inside. Bit of McAlpine flexi there, and it still didn't solve the problem. So what was the problem? The problem was it was leaking on the underside of that Mira Flight shower tray, just where it goes up into the rubber seal goes to the bottom of the shower tray. Now, they are milled off. They grind those off to make them a reasonable fit for a rubber washer. And it's quite a squashy rubber washer, so you think that's going to be okay. Now, the plumber said to him, well, that's okay. What I'll do is I'll put a load of silicone around that and it'll be fine. We can seal it up like that. That's all well and good, but you know, I've been out to countless leaks where people have done that, where they've wodged loads of silicone around something thinking that's going to solve the problem. It does maybe for a year or two, but then they're back to square one. They've got the same problem. Now, don't forget, he wants a leak-free bathroom. That's why he spent all this money. That's why he spent all this time to get himself a leak-free bathroom. So the idea that he's going to bodge up that last bit with a bit of silicone really didn't sit well with him. So he got onto Mira and he said to them, look, do you recommend silicone in the bottom of the shower trays when you seal them up? No, it shouldn't be necessary. The rubber washer, they supply a trap with it. So he thought, okay, told them the problem and he said, oh, don't worry, we'll send you another tray. So, you know, good to their word, they sent another tray. He had a look at it. Tray number 2, just as bad. Now, this is the original tray and you can see that they've ground the waste off a little bit, but just here there's a ridge, and here it's gone very, very thin on the acrylic. So it's just a question of how flat can you get that seal. There's a little lump in there and it's a bit rough, it's a bit undulating around the edges. This is the seal that they provide, which seems like quite a nice little seal actually. It sits perfectly well in there, but you can see that if you're trying to seal it down, the trouble is that it starts to lift at the edges when you're pushing it into place. So, okay, you know, it can work. Now, there's the discrepancy. We've got a high spot there, we've got a low spot there, we've got a dish in there, pretty flat there, and that one is a high spot, that's a rocker there. So it's a lot to ask of the seal. Now, the plumber said to Mike, oh, that's okay, I can just put a bit of silicone around there and it'll all be hunky-dory, it'll be fine. Well, that's okay. I mean, quite honestly, if you put CC1 down there or something like that, it will probably be good for many, many years. But should you have to do it? Should you need to do that? The problem I see with this is that very often we're working blind. Very often we don't have this here. We're trying to put the tray in we've positioned the pipework, we've got the trap in place, and we're lowering the tray onto the trap. The seal is on top of the trap, and then we're just trying to fiddle the thing around and seal it from the top. So what you've done normally is you've got all this connected up to the pipework. You've made your secure pipework connection, and this bit is sitting on the tray, and we lower the tray carefully into position, or we secure with the ring. If you've got a top ring for it, that's absolutely fine. A little smear of silicone underneath that edge is going to solve the problem, because you're going to go straight into the trap then. You're not going to have anything leaking down this edge. You can see that when we tighten that into place. Now I'm going to put some water in it. It's always a good thing to do. A lot of us don't do this because it's an awkward thing, and you've put the tray in by the time this happens. So you can see, despite having tightened it up, there's a very steady drip coming from there. It's actually made the thing worse. It's now dripping from 3 points, and the reason is that that seal is now dished into the recess, so that's where you would have to put all the silicone around, try and do it. Fair play to Mira, they did actually send a replacement tray, and Mike has very helpfully marked that as replacement number 2. And this is replacement number 3, is the last one they sent it. Let's have a look at replacement number 2. I'm not going to unwrap it because I think that they'll all be returned to somewhere, merchants or somewhere. So I'll leave the polythene film and everything on the tray. That's a protective film. So we'll do exactly the same thing. We'll put the trap in. It's not that bad. Let's put some water in it. So Mike, the customer, he looked at that second tray and he thought, well, that's no better than the first one, really. And it was very thin on one edge, and he just didn't have any confidence in it. So he said to them, can you just send me a tray that doesn't leak, please? And they went, oh, well, no problem. We're going to make one for you, specially, and we're going to put it through our gold standard inspection, which means that they got 2 levels of inspection. Let's have a look at the gold standard and see what that's like. Tray number 3, gold standard. I've tightened it as much as I can, but look at it, every time you have a shower, you've got that dripping down, and that's gonna do some damage. This is the problem with plumbing. You're talking about 2 years, 3 years down the line, you've got damp patches appearing on the ceiling. That's why we have to get these things right. So, number 3, the gold inspection, and that didn't really do the trick. So you think, okay, so what's more valuable than gold? Have they got another level of inspection at Mira that they're willing to put these trays through? Well, it appears not, because when Mike spoke to them, the quality services, the quality control people said to him, well, actually, no, that one we sent you, that one we said we were going to make you specially and it was going to be gold standard, that was just one we got off a shelf, and it just went through the ordinary inspection. They were kind of kidding him, if you like. For some reason or another, they didn't do what they said they were going to do, but hey, we know a lot of people like that in the world, don't we? They sent him another one, and this one they absolutely guarantee was specially made. They found the mould, they put it through the process, and they've sent him this tray, absolute gold standard inspection, and they said to him, this is the one. So let's just have a look at this gold standard tray. At this point here, we're touching. So that edge there and that edge there are touching. You can see where they've had the grinder on it. Very slight ridge there, but they haven't done too badly at all. When it comes over to this edge, it dips away by, I would say, 5 millimeters at the edge. So that is falling away at that edge by 5 millimeters. 5 millimeters there, flat there. So that half from there to there is flat, not too bad at all. You could probably even just take that little bit of acrylic off there and make it absolutely, but if that's a gold standard inspection, I wouldn't have passed it. I would have said, let's just rub that little bit off there, can we? But on this side, this is where the trouble comes, because on this side we're rocking away by a considerable amount. The only point that's going to be sealing when you put that seal in is around this edge here. Let me just simulate what happens when we tighten that tray on. Right, I'm going to tighten this. I'm going to push that down as much as I possibly can. Okay, so that's tighter than you would ever make it, and it hasn't made any difference to that gap around there. In other words, it's impossible for this seal to be pushed down any further onto that tray simply by tightening this trap in place. So Mira then said to him,
most of our 90mm standard trays are made using moulds which are not aluminium. Because of this, the precision I believe the customer is looking for is difficult to achieve. The tray waste is within our manufacturing and installation tolerances. The complete grind of the area highlighted would have left or created a negative dip on the waste area, which we believe would have been a much larger cosmetic issue for the customer. We have absolutely no concerns on the performance of the shower tray and are totally confident that it will seal properly. We could grind a tray further, but I believe there would be a complaint around the negative dip. I hope this will go some way to put your mind at rest and you're confident to install the last tray received.
So I will just suggest one thing to Mira as a plumber, not as an engineer. If they deepened this section here, if in the mould they made a deeper section here, so they gave themselves a good 10mm, if you like, of extra meat on here, they could then get a grinder, and not a guy just doing it by eye. They could get an actual grinder that just sat on top of there like a milling machine and just milled that edge out so that it would be absolutely pan flat, level wouldn't rock on it, it would meet all the way round, and I think that would solve the problem. And it doesn't seem to me like that's such a big ask, really. So just a little postscript to this story. I did actually get involved and talk to Mira, and in the end they did send out a 5th tray, and this time the tray was right. Now you could say that it shouldn't have taken Skill Builder Channel to get involved in this to get them to do the job properly, and they did readily admit that there'd been a breakdown of communications, but they did say to me that they're going to get on top of this, they're going to sort these quality control problems out, make sure it doesn't happen again. But if you get a problem with them in the future, let us know and we'll be on the case.